Hello everyone, welcome to another video tutorial from SFDC Stop, and in this video we are going to get started with Lightning Web Components, right? So let's have a look at what is LWC first. What is LWC? LWC or Lightning Web Components is a new programming model for building Lightning components. Like if you are already working on Salesforce for from the last few years, then you must have known about Aura, right? So Aura was also a programming model for building Lightning components, and Lightning Web Components is also a programming model for building Lightning components. But the good thing about Lightning Web Components is that it uses the latest web standards. It can also communicate with the Aura components that are present in your org, and it deliver unparalleled performance, right? So if you compare the performance of Aura component as compared to the LWC component, LWC components are much faster and they give a very good performance as compared to the Aura components. Okay, so the first question that we have in mind when we talk about LWC, that why should we move to LWC when Aura is already here, right? Because Aura was introduced in 2014, and since then we have been working on Aura and we are very much familiar with Aura components. So why, as a Salesforce developer, we should move to LWC when we are already familiar with Aura, right? Okay, so there is a story behind that, and let's learn about. I mean, why should we move to LWC by having a look at the story. So in 2014, Lightning Component Framework was introduced by Salesforce along with the Aura programming model. As I told you before, that Aura is also a programming model for building Lightning components, and Lightning Web Components is also a programming model, right? So in 2014, Lightning Component Framework was introduced, which uses the Aura programming model, and this framework we are using till now to build Lightning components, right? But what happened to the other languages? Because I mean, this is about Salesforce, but if we talk about the whole web, there were a number of frameworks that were introduced since 2014, and they are continuously increasing, right? The most popular frameworks are React, Angular, and we can say TypeScript. So there are a lot of frameworks that are JavaScript frameworks and that are introduced one by one since 2014. So what happened when a number of frameworks were introduced? Frameworks become the language. Whether it is a React framework or Angular or the Lightning Component framework, they are all JavaScript frameworks, right? But with so high level of abstraction that they feel like they are different languages. So let's say you are a React developer and you want to switch to Angular, right? So you need to learn Angular first, then only you can switch to Angular. But both are JavaScript frameworks. Since it's very difficult to move from React to Angular, because they are having their own syntax and they are having very high level of abstraction, so that you have to learn that syntax first before moving to any other framework. Let's say you are an Angular developer and you want to start building Lightning components, right? So you need to learn the syntax of Aura and how it works before moving to that. So due to this, frameworks were becoming the language, and developers started facing issues. What was the issue? The issue was that skills were not transferable. It was hard for developers to switch from one framework to another, right? And the applications or the components that were made in different frameworks were not able to communicate among themselves. So let's say you developed a component in React, and you developed one component in Angular, and then you developed one component in Lightning component framework, right? So in that case, all these three components won't be able to communicate among themselves because they are built upon different frameworks, right? So it was very difficult for developers to switch from one framework to another, as well as if we are building components in our own framework. So let's say there is a job vacancy for a React developer, and I have previously worked on Salesforce and I want to switch to React. And I actually gave an interview and I say that I can develop components in React, but that won't work. Why? Because the React components cannot actually interact with the components that are developed on Angular. So that's why companies they started giving out vacancies according to the tech stack that they are using, right? So this was the limitations, that apps or components were made in different frameworks. They were not able to communicate among themselves. So this originated the need for standardization in web. So after all these difficulties started arising for developers, they actually gave a kind of requirement, you can say, or the need that we need some kind of web standards, right? We need some standardization in web, and we need to improve the core JavaScript so that there is no so much dependency on the framework, and the framework should not become like programming languages, right? Okay, so what happened over the last 6 years? Over the last 6 years, various standards were developed in the web. By standards, I can simply means that the core JavaScript that is being used in each and every framework, or that is the base of each and every framework, is actually improved. Because web standards, when they came in, they actually improved the core elements that are present in the web. For example, ECMAScript was introduced, web components, custom elements, templates, slots, and shadow DOM. All these things were introduced in the core JavaScript itself. Many features that required a JavaScript framework now came standard. So all these features, like web components were a part of a Lightning component framework, or let's say React framework or Angular framework. Custom elements were a part of framework. You cannot actually create a custom JavaScript element in 2014, but you can create it now, right, without using any framework. So all these features that were actually a part of framework in the past, they are actually a part of core JavaScript right now. So all these features now come standard. With most standards, we have a common component model, a common programming model, transferable skills among developers, because now when we have a common component model and a common programming model, and all those features that are very much useful are not framework dependent, so developers can actually switch from one framework to another easily. So what it leads to, it actually leads to transferable skills among developers, and the components also started communicating between each other, and the performance actually became better. Why the performance became better? Because the core features are now a part of web engines instead of frameworks. So when we actually embedded all these core features into the core JavaScript itself, instead of having it in the framework, the core JavaScript actually became much more powerful and much more better, and that leads to the improvement in the performance, and that leads to some kind of, you can say, lesser difficulty for developers to switch from one framework to another. So when all this happened, Salesforce also took a step ahead in this direction, and Salesforce developed LWC as a lightweight framework built on the top of latest web standards. So LWC is a very lightweight framework that is built on the top of latest web standards. So it is actually not having all those functionality in the framework itself, like custom elements, templates, and all those functionality are not now a part of framework in LWC, but they are built on the latest web standards. So all the basic elements are a part of core JavaScript, and you can actually build on the top of that. So Salesforce actually developed a very lightweight framework on the top of the latest web standards, so that you can actually make use of those web standards that are actually present in the that are actually present in the market, and you can leverage that. What it leads to, at the end, there is a more flexibility to developers if you are using LWC, because you need to learn the standard once and then you can use it anywhere, right? Non-Salesforce developers can also work on Lightning Web Components, because even if you're not from Salesforce and you want to switch to Salesforce, right? In that case also, you just need to be aware of the web standards that are being used by the LWC framework, and you can directly jump onto the LWC, right? The third point is that more solutions to the common issues faced by the developers on the web. So let's say you were working on Aura before, right? And you are facing any kind of issue in Aura. So what you need to do? You need to just search within the developer community who is working on Aura, right? So all the people who are working on Aura can only help you to solve that particular problem in JavaScript. But now, when everything is standardized and everything is a part of the core JavaScript framework, even if you are facing any issue, you can ask anyone who works on JavaScript whether he or she is working on your particular framework or not. But he can help you because you are using the same standards that are being used by him or her on his particular framework, right? So there are more solutions, or more number of solutions are actually available on the web, because we are using the latest web standards. Less complexity with a single HTML, CSS, and JavaScript file. So if you have worked on Aura before, you must be aware that there were around 2-3 JavaScript files. One was controller, one was a helper file, one was a renderer file, right? And there was one HTML file as well, one CSS file, along with one design attribute file as well. So now there is very less complexity in LWC, because we will be having only one HTML file, one CSS file, and one JavaScript file, right? Faster development, because we are using the standards, we are using the core JavaScript methods that are actually improved, and that's why there's the development is faster, because we are having a single JavaScript file, so we don't need to switch the files again and again, and we don't need to write much more code, and so the development is faster, right? After that, we have better performance. Better performance in terms of, because we have more, we have made our core JavaScript very powerful, so that's why the performance is better, because all those heavy frameworks that we used to use before are now very lightweight frameworks, so the performance is faster, right? Communication with the existing Aura components is also available, because Salesforce has built LWC in such a way that you can actually communicate with the existing Aura components. So all those components that you have developed in Aura in the past, you don't need to change that, at least at present. You can just start working on LWC component, and later on you can also migrate your old Aura components into LWC components whenever you have time and bandwidth to do so. Okay, so I mean, this is just a look at just a quick look at 2014 web stack, and this is a 2019 web stack that we are having. So here you can see web standards are very less. We had ECMAScript 5, we had events which were only present in, I mean, which were present in JavaScript. We had some standard elements. By standard elements, we can mean like paragraph tag, HTML tag, body tag, right? Rendering was there because the elements were rendered onto the DOM, right? And all those good things were a part of the framework earlier. Like if we talk about language extensions like JSX and all that stuff, these were a part of framework. Modules, all those import statements. So let's say you want to import something from a different JavaScript file, that were a part of framework. That was not something that was available to you in the core JavaScript. Rendering optimization depending was dependent on the framework, because if your framework is good, then your JavaScript code will be optimized, otherwise not. Templates were a part of the framework. Similarly, component model were a part of framework. Component model, I can say, like, if you actually want to create different kind of components and you want them to interact with each other, then all this were dependent on the framework, right? And UI components were a part of framework. Like we used to use some kind of UI components like lightning record, edit form, record view form. So all those components that are already built, they were a part of framework actually, right? And data services were also a part of framework. Okay, so what happened later on? Everything that was a part of framework, it came under web standards, and only those things that were specific to one particular framework remain in the framework. So here we can see that ECMAScript 7 came in, because ECMAScript is continuously increasing. It started from 5 and then 6, 7, 8, and in 6, 7, 8 we had much more features in JavaScript. Like let's say we are talking about JavaScript arrays, right? So in case of array, we have array dot contains, array dot find function, array dot sort function. So all those functions came in later. All those classes were developed later when ECMAScript evolved. And modules are now available as a part of web standards, because let's say you want to import one JavaScript file into another JavaScript file, you can do that using core JavaScript without using any framework. Shadow DOM is now a part of web standard. Shadow DOM is something, let's say you want to create a parent component and a child component, and you don't want the parent component CSS to be affected inside a child component as well. So that is where Shadow DOM came in, and it was developed as a part of web standards, right? Custom elements were developed as a part of web standards, because earlier you weren't able to create any kind of custom components or custom elements if you are not using any framework. But now, using core JavaScript as well, you can create your custom elements. Templates became a part of standards. Web components became a part of standards. So all these things that were part of framework before now came in as a part of web standards. So now we have much more flexibility. And even if you are a JavaScript developer who has worked on core JavaScript according to the standards that are right now available, you are very well prepared to work on LWC directly, I should say. Okay, and all these things that were specialized. So let's say some specialized frame services that a framework provide, they are a part of framework. Some data services that are specific to a framework are a part of framework. Some UI component are a part of framework. So we can actually understand this by having a look at the Lightning Web Components framework, that how the specialization is done and what are the standards that are being used. So the standards in case of Lightning Web Components is also the same. All the web standards that are currently available, they are being used in the Lightning Web Component framework. But if we talk about security, because security is something that is specific to Salesforce, right? So security is a part of Lightning Web Component framework. Lightning Data Service is a part of Lightning Web Component framework, because this is something which is specific to Salesforce. Base Lightning components, because they are being used in Salesforce, right? So this is also a part of Lightning Web Component framework. So the framework became much lesser, and the framework mainly focused on the points that are very crucial or that are very specific to Salesforce, and everything else became a part of web standards, right? So how we got to know this? When we combined web standards and metadata, we got to know that we have an unmanaged productivity because web standards are much more powerful. Core JavaScript is much more powerful. You can do everything in the core JavaScript, and you just need some specialized services. For that particular specialized services, you are using frameworks. So right now in LWC we have base lightning components, around 70 plus UI elements are there, which are built as custom elements. So this is also where web standards are being used, because these UI elements are actually built as custom elements that you can also build using the web standards that are currently present in JavaScript, right? Lightning data service is present in the framework because it is actually required by you if you want to access any kind of Salesforce record using the record ID, and if you want data caching, data synchronization features like that. So this is something which is Salesforce specific. That's why it is a part of framework. And UI API, that is user interface API, because Lightning data service is also a part of, or I can say is also built upon UI API, not a part of, but it's built upon UI API. So if you want your components to be metadata aware, then you can use UI API. It's also a part of framework because it's Salesforce specific, right? So all those things that were Salesforce specific are now included in the framework, and all those common things that should be available in the core JavaScript itself are now available as the web standards. So that's why we need to move to LWC if you want to develop faster, and if you want to I can say go with time, because everyone is actually leveraging the improved JavaScript which is coming again and again, which is getting released automatically. So all those web standards are being used by everyone in the industry. So if you want to be with time, you just need to switch to LWC so that your components are much more faster and much more productive. The good thing with LWC is that Aura and LWC can coexist. So Aura components can also include Lightning Web components as well, and they share the same Salesforce services, that is Lightning Data Service and UI API. So as you can see here, here we have the Aura programming model, and here we have the Lightning Web component programming model. So all those things that were a part of framework, apart from the top three, which is Salesforce specific, all those things are now a part of the web standards, which are being used in LWC, and only this particular thing is a part of the Lightning Web component framework. Okay, so we got to know that what is LWC and why do we need LWC. Now it's time to create our first LWC component. So let's begin. So I'm going to switch to VS Code very quickly, and what I have done till now, I have actually created a new scratch org, and we are going to create our first LWC component right now. So the first thing that you need to do if you want to get started with LWC, I'll recommend you to install this plugin, which is an SFDX plugin, and this plugin is local server for LWC development. So its name is LWC-dev-server, and you can install it using the command this. So all you need to do is to just create a project, and even if you're not creating a project, you can directly install this particular plugin because it is installed globally, right? So once you are into your terminal, you just need to copy and paste this command, which is sfdx plugins install @salesforce-lwc @salesforce/lwc-dev-server, and once you just write this command and click enter, it will automatically start installing this particular LWC-dev-server plugin using SFDX, right? And once you have installed that, you just need to run this command, which is sfdx space plugins colon update. So as you can see here, I have already actually executed this command. So once you start installing this LWC-dev-server plugin, it will just ask you a single question, which is like this: this plugin is not digitally signed and its authenticity cannot be verified. Continue installation, yes or no. So you just need to click on yes and press enter, right? So it will automatically start installing the plugin, which is LWC-dev-server, and it will mainly install 4 packages that are a part of this plugin, right? So all you need to do is to just wait and let it install the framework. Okay, so I have installed the framework now, and the next thing that I need to do is to run this command, which is sfdx space plugins colon update, right? So I'm just going to copy and paste this command here, and I'm going to press enter. So what it will do, it will update all the existing plugins that are present in my SFDX. So let it install and update all the plugins, and then we'll continue working on LWC, right? Okay, so I have also run this command, which is sfdx plugin update, and my plugins are now updated successfully. let's move ahead. So this is the first command that you need to do if you want to start working on LWC. I mean, it's not actually required because you can actually preview your LWC components in your org also, but I'm going to use a local LWC server so that we can actually preview our component very easily and very fast in a fast manner. So that's why I'm using these commands to install the local LWC server, right? So what it will do, it will actually install a server onto your own system so that you can actually preview your components very easily. So this is the first command that you need to use, and this is the second command that you need to use to set up a local server at your own system, right? So I can simply write it as set up a local LWC server, right? Okay, so once you have your server set up, the next thing that you need to do is to create an LWC component. For that, you can just open your command palette by using Control plus Shift plus P, or you can also open your command palette by just going to the tab above, and you can just select this command palette, right? So this is the command palette that will open automatically, or you can use this command, which is Control plus Shift plus P for Windows, or Command plus Shift plus P for Mac, right? So once you have opened your command palette, you can see an option here which is create lightning web component. Otherwise, you can simply search for LWC, and you will be having an option which is SFDX colon create lightning web component. And this option is mainly coming from the Salesforce extension pack. So in case you haven't installed that extension pack, you can just go to the VS Code extensions and you can search for Salesforce extension pack here, right? So make sure that you have actually installed this Salesforce extension pack, and you will be having all the commands in your command palette, right? Okay, so all you need to do is to open the command palette and search for LWC, and you will be having an option like I have here, which is create lightning web component. You just need to press enter, and next we need to give a name to our lightning web component. So a lightning web component name can be, let's say my component name is first component or my first LWC component, right? So my first LWC, and then it will ask which is the directory where you want to store this component. So you just need to choose the default directory that you have in your project and press enter. So what it is doing right now, it is actually creating a new lightning web component for me, and it will have that component stored under the default directory, which is nothing but under the force app and main and default folder you are having an LWC folder. So it will actually create a new lightning web component, and that component will be stored under this LWC folder. So here you can see it has automatically created a new component for me, which is of the name my first LWC, and here I can see I have an HTML file and I have a JS file as well, right? Okay, so let's do one thing. I'm going to make this component really simple, and let's see what we can do using LWC in our first component, right? So first of all, we are going to make a lightning card. So as in Aura we used to do, I mean we used to have lightning cards, right? So we have same lightning cards in LWC as well. So I'm just going to uh, write a lightning card here, but before that, let's preview our component locally because we have just installed a local LWC server using these commands, right? So let's preview our component as it is, like it is right now, empty, and let's see what is our LWC component and how does it look like, right? So in order to preview your LWC component locally, what you need to do, you just need to right click on this folder, and here you will have an option which is SFDX colon preview component locally. So you just need to click on this option and it will automatically preview your component. But before that, you also need to select out of these three options. So here I have three options. One is use desktop browser, second is use Android emulator, or use iOS simulator. So you can just choose the first one, which is use desktop browser, and it will automatically open your local development server. So here you can see I have my local development server automatically opened, and my LWC component, which is my first LWC, is automatically previewed here. And I'm not actually seeing anything inside this box because my LWC component is empty right now. So let's say I make a small change. Let's say I said that this is my first LWC component, right? And I just saved it. So here you can see this local development server will refresh automatically, and it will automatically reload my component. So here you can see I have a message. This is my first LWC component. So this is how, I mean, this is how fast it is to develop in LWC, because everything you can do, you can actually preview onto your own local server, and you don't need a Salesforce org for this. You can just directly review it, or I can say preview it using the local server, right? So let's create a card first of all. I'm just going to use lightning card to create a card, and the label of the card will be or sorry, the title of the card will be, let's say, my first LWC component, right? And inside this card, what I'm going to have, let's say, a card body. So a card body will be, I think, a paragraph is fine, and I can simply give it a class which is, let's say, SLDS hyphen P hyphen around underscore small. So I'm just giving it a small padding, and after that I can write here that my content here, right? So what I have done, I have simply made a lightning card. I have given a paragraph which will be my card body, and inside this paragraph I have added a small padding, and I've simply added a message here, right? So if I check here in my preview, I can simply see that I have my first LWC component already ready, which has a card and a title, and my content is also present here inside the card, right? So let's do one thing. Instead of a simple message named as my content here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually make a lightning input field. So let's make an input field, lightning input, and inside this lightning input, what will be having? We'll be having a label of this input. So the label will be, let's say, write your name, right? Or yeah, write what is your name? We can say, yeah, write your name is fine. Let's keep it as write your name, and I can also have a value for this input. So value will be blank initially, right? And what else can I have for this input? I can have, I think, an OnChange handler, but I'll add it later on. So let's close this input as of now, and I can simply have it as this, right? So let's have a look at our lightning input. So here you can see we have our lightning input, and I can write anything inside this lightning input, right? Okay, and inside this, I'm just going to add a kind of width here for my paragraph. So width will be, or I can say style will be width, or it should be minimum width, I think. So minimum width will be, for me, it's 30 rem, let's say, right? So what it will do, it will actually give a minimum width to my lightning card that I'm using. So the minimum width is this right now, right? And what I want right now is that everything that I'll be writing here in the lightning input, I can actually preview it, right? So let's do one thing. Let's move on to JavaScript and write some JavaScript code. So inside my JavaScript, I can simply see that I have a lightning element which is being imported from the LWC library, and I have created my first LWC component, which is I have a simple class which is actually extending the lightning element which is imported from above, right? Lightning element is also a class which is being imported from the LWC library, and I'm extending that class. And inside this class, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to make a simple variable. Let's name it as name. We can simply name it as name, right? So inside this variable, what we are going to do, we are going to actually update this variable whenever we are actually writing something over here, right? So I have simply created a variable named as name, and I don't need to give any declaration like where or let here. I can simply give the name of the variable, and that's it. So this is my variable which is name, and I'm going to bind this input field with the my variable which is name here, right? So everything that I'll be writing over here which will actually be updated with the name. Okay, so now my name is updated, and let's say if I give a default value like name is equal to hello, and let's save it, and let's see what happens here. So here you can see I have the default value for my name which is hello, right? So it's coming automatically because I have given it over here, right? Okay, so let's see what happens if I change the name. So I have given a default value which is hello, and I'm going to change this. Or let's make it more interesting first. I'm going to name it as Rahul Malhotra because my name is Rahul, right? And I'm going to have a simple line here. Let's have a BR tag for a line break, and after that I'm going to have a simple line that hello, and I'm going to add a name then, and after this I'm going to have it as welcome to your first LWC component, right? Okay, so let's see how it goes. So Rahul Malhotra is my default name, it's coming perfectly. and it's saying me that hello Rahul Malhotra, welcome to your first LWC component. So I have used the name to bind it here in the Lightning input, and I have also displayed a name here. So any kind of variable that you are declaring in JavaScript, you can simply display it in your HTML by using the curly braces, and inside that you can give the name of your variable, right? So here I am displaying the variable value. So let's say if I just change it, if I make it let's say let's say I make it as uh, what can I use, Richard Hendricks, right? So as you can see here that if I'm changing the name, it is not actually being updated. But what I want, if I change the name here, it should be updated here. So in case of Aura, it was quite simple because if I'm actually binding an input field with an Aura attribute, and if I'm updating that attribute, it is automatically being rendered, right? My component is automatically being rendered, and that is having a real time effect. But in case of LWC, it's not that simple. You actually need to have a change handler on this particular input field, and you need to update that name yourself, because this is what JavaScript standards are right now. So we need to update this name ourselves by having a change handler. Okay, so let's do one more thing. I'm going to add a change handler here. So I'm going to just use on change. So you can see a number of handlers are available, like on focus, on scroll, on click, on change. So there are a number of handlers that you can use, but we are going to use on change handler here because I'm changing the input, right? And inside this, I mean, when on change is called, I'll actually call my JavaScript function. So my JavaScript function will be, let's say, update name, right? Because I'm updating the name here. So what it will do, it will actually call this method, which is update name, whenever the value of the input field is changed, right? So whenever the value of the input field is changed, this method will be called. Now I need to define this update name method inside my JavaScript. So let's move on to the JavaScript file, and I'm going to have a single method here, which is named as update name, right? And inside this method, what I'm going to do, I'm going to get the name of the input field. So that name I can get by using an event, because whenever I'm changing something, or let's say whenever I'm writing something in here, it is actually firing an onChange event automatically, and that event I can automatically handle in the function that I have specified in the onChange attribute, right? So this event will actually give me the actual value which is present in the input field, right? So here you can see, I mean, whenever I am going to change something, it is actually firing an onChange event, and it is actually going to call this method. So in order to just confirm this, let me add a console.log here, and I'm going to simply give a message as called, right? Okay, so let's see if we are changing our input field, and then our update name method is called or not. So I'm just going to open my console. You can just right click and click on inspect, or use Control plus Shift plus I to open the console, right? And let's say if I'm doing any kind of changes, like I gave a space, and I'm writing here as hey Rahul blah 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 blah, and here you can see whenever I'm making a change, this called is called. So right now this called is being called 55 times, right? And as far I'm making a change, this called is actually being printed. So what I got to know from this, that whenever I'm making a change, this method is being called automatically, because I have actually binded this method update name with my on change attribute inside my lightning input. So what I need to do now, I actually need to get the value which is actually present in my input field, right? So the value that is present in my input field, I can get that value using the event variable, and I'm going to display that value here. So I'm going to add a console log here, and this time I'm going to display the value. So the value will be event, because this event is being fired, right? And what is the target I can say component of that event? So the target will be target. So event.target is basically this particular lightning input. That is, what is the target from where this particular event is fired, right? So event.target will be this particular lightning input. And what I need from the target, I need the value from the target. So what I'm actually displaying here, I'm actually displaying the target's value. So whenever this event is fired, and update name method is called, and what I'm going to do, I'm actually getting the target from the update name. So this target will be this particular lightning input field, right? And I'm actually getting the value of this particular target, which will be nothing but name. So I'm getting event.target.value, and it will give me the value of the event. So let me fetch it again, and I'm actually going to check whether I'm getting the value of the target or not. So this is automatically refreshed, and I'm going to actually open my console again, and this time I'm actually going to see if my value is coming. Rahul Malhotra. Let's name it something else. I'm going to remove this and I'm going to add a name as Richard and Hendricks, right? So here you can see as I'm typing, I'm actually getting the value of the input field. So earlier let me just clear it again and let me show it to you again. If I just write R here, the input field value is R. If I write I, it is Ri. If I write C, it is Ric. ARD, and then it is Hendrix and HENDRICKS. So whenever I'm making a change, even if I'm removing something, it is actually being removed, right? So whenever I'm changing something, it is actually going to call this method automatically, and inside this we'll get an event, and we can simply get the value of the input field by using event.target.value. Okay, so I know that this particular JavaScript variable is actually binded with this value, but it is not actually re-rendering the component, or I can simply say that this variable is actually not updated whenever the value of the input field is updated, right? So what I need to do, I need to manually update this particular variable, right? So that it is actually being affected everywhere where it is being used. So what I can do for that, I can simply assign this value to this particular name variable. So what I can do like this dot name, and I can simply assign the value, which is event dot target dot value, right? Okay, so what I have done here, I have actually assigned the target value, that is the value of the input field that I am getting, to the name, right? So let's have a look at the component again, and let's see if our value is working or not this time. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to remove this and have a look at this particular Rahul Malhotra, which is written below whenever I'm changing the value of the text field. So as I'm removing this, you can see here that the value is being removed, right? And if I'm writing something else, let's say hello SFDC stop viewers, it is actually being updated in real time, right? So this is how, I mean, you can simply update the variable. All you need to do is to add an on-change handler to your input field, and then you can update the JavaScript variable, I can say, which is actually binded with this particular input field or any kind of input field, right? So let's say it is the initial message was hello, welcome to your first LWC component. So if I just remove the initial value, I can simply have the initial message as hello, comma, welcome to the first LWC component, and you need to write your name here. So let's say I write my name as hello Rahul Malhotra. So it will give me a message as hello Rahul Malhotra, welcome to your first LWC component. So this is how, I mean, you can simply create an LWC component and you can have a kind of JavaScript, and this is how the on-chain handlers are being actually used. And whenever this variable value is being changed, it is automatically updated everywhere. So it is updated here also, and it is updated here also, and all this HTML is being rendered automatically again. So this is how easy it is to actually create a Lightning Web Component. And in the upcoming tutorial series, what we are going to do, we are actually going to build an LWC component, which we'll be using, and we are going to learn LWC by building the components, right? So let's have a look at one more thing before we end this tutorial. I just want to give you the references. So the references that I use for this tutorial is our Salesforce blog. So this is a very good Salesforce blog if you want to get into deep into how the Lightning Web Components were introduced and what was the thing behind that. So I got these are my references, and there's also a good trailhead on Lightning Web Component if you just want to have a quick start with LWC. You can just follow this trailhead, and it will automatically set up your Salesforce DX environment and VS Code also that we haven't covered in here. However, if you want to just have a look at the videos, I have a video in which you can actually set up VS Code for Salesforce. So if you just have a look at that video, that will be enough for LWC also. And apart from that video, you can just install this particular LWC plugin so that we can work on our local server. And in the upcoming tutorial, we will actually create an LWC component. We'll create that component in our local server first, and then we'll deploy that onto our org also, and we'll also see how that component works in our org, right? So that's all for this tutorial, everyone. I hope you liked it, and let me know your feedback in the comments down below. And till then, I mean, we'll meet in the next tutorial, of course. Till then, have a good day. Bye bye.